The next team is Team Dice from Finland. Give them a hand, guys.
Hey guys, we're Team Dice from AALTO University, Finland. My name is Taneli. Here with me are Jere and Niko. And in this presentation, we will analyze and give our recommendations on Volkswagen's 5 most critical issues to help them clarify their strategy 2025. We have scored all these scenarios based on their financial impact, issue complexity, and urgency. Next, we will go through all of them in the order of priority, and Niko will start off with the first priority.
Thank you, Taneli. So our first priority is the e-mobility strategy. We believe that securing the EVB, electric vehicle battery supply, is a crucial component of Volkswagen's whole strategy in 2025. We started our analysis by looking at 7 different development alternatives, and we scored them based on 10 different factors. We came to a conclusion that the top 2 alternatives are for Volkswagen to either acquire a current manufacturer or to produce the EVs themselves. So the acquisition alternative can work really well if Volkswagen can find a suitable company to buy that's large enough and works well with them. And that way they would save a lot of time compared to setting up their own production from scratch. However, acquisition strategy is also very risky because there are not that many companies in the market that they could buy. And it's possible that they cannot find a suitable match for them that's really for sale. And for that reason, our recommendation is to start in the beginning pursuing both of the top 2 alternatives simultaneously, so that the final decision can be made between the 2 alternatives a little bit later when there's more information available about the exact acquisition targets. Meanwhile, because this will surely take some time, we recommend negotiating a supply contract with Panasonic because they offer a good quality, enough capacity, and a decent price. However, this time Volkswagen should spend extra effort in good communication so that there won't be any misunderstanding with Panasonic. Next year we'll go through our scenarios 2 and 3.
Yeah, thank you very much, Niko. In this case, Volkswagen has faced a diesel issue as we've been changes in their management team, and this has led us to a situation where we need to think group strategy, structure, and cost optimization. By doing this, we did 2 analyses to achieve especially the group long-term profitability targets. We analyzed the cost optimization alternative and then the divestment strategy. In the end, just to conclude this, we ended up to cost optimization strategy since according to the charter guest data, we get good profitability margin exceeding the management target of 6.75% by 1.2% by functionalizing the units under the sales, administration, and selling. So why we actually excluded the divestment strategy is that we see the divestment strategy as a threat to the Volkswagen brand, which is already quite low profitability. And also in the future, in this analysis, we went through all the models, and if you look at the group and synergies between the group brands, we actually cannot improve or get the optimization strategy done if we divest all crucial brands. To conclude analysis, we get an NPV of the 24 billion. And if we go to the third priority, we choose the strategy sourcing of cobalt in Africa. And in this case, we faced a really hard situation where we cannot actually secure all the supply from the mining giants, and we ended up to the 50-50 split between mining giants and artisanal miners. And of course, if we are getting all parts of the supply from mining giants, we need to take a little bit risk, so we can negotiate a little bit shorter contract as well. But we cannot enough stress the ethical issues what comes to artisanal miners. When we comply with the artisanal miners, we need to be sure that they comply with the law and the international standards. And also, we need to negotiate between the governments in Congo, in China, and also the artisanal miners, where we can cooperate together to get a better solution that benefits all of the parties involved. Just to kind of conclude our analysis why we are getting this approach is that we kind of can increase our flexibility what comes to the cobalt supply, is that if we increase the original miners, and then if the new battery technologies are invented, then we can switch to the new batteries. And that's the priority 3, and Taneli will tell us about the 4th priority.
Thanks, Jere. The 4th priority is product portfolio rationalization, for which we had 2 key objectives. First, to reduce the prices of volume range in key emerging markets, and second, to identify the loss-making car models and to cease production. We started our analysis by identifying the key targeted markets. After that, we found the price elasticity of the demand, and then we estimated the optimal amount of price reductions. Finally, we identified the loss-making car models and chose which ones to cease in production. In our analysis, we found that Volkswagen should rationalize its pricing. By reducing the prices by approximately 26%, we found that Volkswagen could achieve volume increases of approximately 33%. So there is a clear increase in revenue. We additionally found that Volkswagen could achieve further cost savings by centralizing certain support functions and achieving reduced overheads. Next, Niko will continue with the 5th priority.
Yes, so our 5th priority is about environmental legislation. So soon, regulators will impose fines of 600 million euros per year for those who do not meet the new emission standards. And Volkswagen currently doesn't. So there are 3 alternatives. The first alternative is that Volkswagen can invest in brand new engines. The second is that it can modify the current range of engines. And third is that it can take no action at all. So we did net present value calculations that took into account the initial investments, the fines, and the effect on demand. We found that actually it looks like that taking no action at all is financially the best alternative. However, this doesn't take into account the synergies that investments in scenarios or alternatives 1 and 2 it doesn't take into account investments into MEB platform technology. And those investments also help with the e-mobility strategy. That's first priority. And for that reason, actually our recommendation here is to invest in modifying the current range of engines, and that's also a much more ethical thing to do than to just take no action at all. So those were our 5 scenarios. And lastly, we just want to emphasize that for Volkswagen, as a very large international corporation, it's very important to be able to prioritize these strategic initiatives. And while we believe that all of them are really important, we want to pick e-mobility as the top priority that should be acted upon immediately. We at Team DICE, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to ask, what was your thinking around including the cobalt priority when you would not need to source cobalt for your batteries because you have chosen an option where somebody else is responsible for that? So what was your thinking in that?
Thank you for your question. So first of all, actually, we compared the batteries and the prices and what are the kind of standard right now. And of course, the cobalt is really crucial for the #1 priority for e-mobility. So that's why we kind of included this as a 3rd priority, which is really important for the group.
Okay. Do you think, let me ask you this, do you think Volkswagen needs to source that cobalt Did you choose an option where Volkswagen is manufacturing the batteries?
Yeah. So we had two possible development alternatives. So one was to acquire a manufacturer, and the other one was to start from scratch and build up their own production.
Yes, my understanding was your longer-term strategy was to acquire.
Actually, the strategy was to start pursuing both of the alternatives so that you can make the final decision a little bit later, because right now we didn't have the information about how well. Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. That helps me understand. Thank you. The second thing I'd like to get is, this might be again, seem like a vague question, but how serious do you think the Dieselgate scandal, Dieselgate issue was? Do you think it is a company-ending problem? Or do you think it's just the kind of thing that happens and they've got to make some changes? I'm interested to understand your thinking. I'd like to know how you saw it. Do you think that this was a company-ending problem?
Thank you for your question. So, first of all, we think this is industry-wide problem. Of course, we have seen the other car models, car makers doing exactly the same thing. Of course, we need to really stress this issue. Volkswagen was one of the first companies who really faced this, and as well, we can see that in their share price, it's devaluated compared to the peers. So I guess it's in their price already. But I think so we needed to really stress this as a company-wide, and they have already made some changes in the management team just to issue this.
So I appreciate how challenging this is for you, and I want you to know that we support you. But you're not kind of answering my question, and I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. I was very interested that in your paper, the ethical issues didn't really come through. So you're choosing to source 50% of your cobalt from a region that is renowned for essentially child labor. And could you tell me how you are planning to, I just didn't really get the detail on how you're going to mitigate child labor when 50% of your cobalt is coming from that source.
And of course, every miners or whatever we are using in our supply chain is a complex problem in that the supply chain is really hard to investigate, to be honest. And of course, we need to use approved artisanal miners, of course.
So, forgive me. So what I would like to know is what made you choose a 50% strategy as opposed to let's not use them at all? What was the deciding factor that made you go that way?
It is a fact that we cannot increase flexibility with the miners, and we cannot actually get the supply of that what in the case. So kind of it is a huge problem in this.
I'd love to go down this, but I need to get my fellow judges time.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a question on your pricing strategy, your reduction in pricing strategy, which I couldn't quite understand, because if I look in premium cars, if you look, the prices have come down significantly. Have you considered that? If you look on the other side, in terms of overheads, have gone up significantly, 52% fixed overheads. How did you arrive in focusing just on a pricing strategy?
So you mean the reduction of prices that we...
Yeah, instead of investigating why the prices of the premium cars have gone so much down and doing certain interventions, or understanding why overheads gone up 15% and doing certain interventions there as well.
Yeah, so we mainly chose to focus on the general pricing structure and look at the price elasticities. And we were using an academic study that had studied certain automobile branches, but we are not sure if all the premium branches were included in that study. So maybe if we had the access to the internal data of Volkswagen, we could make even more detailed analysis on the certain car models that have these pricing issues.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We, as the board of Volkswagen, do you know that the brand is one of the big things, right? What I'm still missing is why when the Dieselgate was on the news, and everything that has been developing in the industries for the environmental point of view, you have been exposed for cobalt, you have made your choice that 50% will come from cobalt from DRC. I want to understand your rationale, how you're going to, or you're thinking to tackle this publicity, bad publicity that Volkswagen is having, is impacting the shares.
Yeah, of course, it's not a conflict minor yet, but it can be easily one. So we get stressed this situation to increase the investments there to kind of cooperate with the government, with the locals to invest in the country, so that everybody can kind of benefit it.
Yeah, also,
Sorry, I didn't get that one. So can you please elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah. So kind of investigate and cooperate with the country.
Let me rephrase the question. So my question is, how, if the brand, if the share value is based a lot on reputation and also the forecast on your forecast, right? You mentioned that you estimate elasticity and you will continue the demand of the cars, right? So how are you putting in this equation the potential ethical situation that Volkswagen is facing with the Dieselgate, and that now that you're proposing to go and source 50% of cobalt from DRC and doing not publicity that you're expecting minor labor or something like that. So I want to understand that one, if you can elaborate a little bit in that.
Of course, we need to cooperate with the local governments to get the stable confidence in the country and kind of go there to stress these problems and invest to proper facilities, to proper work hours, to proper labor that ensure, and we need to increase the monitoring there. Of course, we need to put there billions.
yeah, and I also like to add that it was like an emission scandal, and now our first priority was the e-mobility strategy. We also believe that by like putting full focus on electric cars, we can also shift kind of the focus from the emission scandal to like that we are like forerunners in the field of electric cars, which is viewed as more environmentally friendly.
Thank you so much, Team Dice, for putting this together. As a board, we appreciate the efforts. I must just say that I struggled a bit to, as I'm sitting here as a board member, I was trying to apply my mind to what we need to do when, and I didn't quite get that coming out. So when I look at the strategy, structure, and cost optimization, you mentioned optimizing sales, admin, and selling. Part of what we expected you to advise us on was what should we centralize and what should we decentralize. I didn't get that coming, for us to be able to apply our minds and actually see whether some of the centralization strategies would actually help us with cost optimization. So that wasn't very clear to me. Similarly, in the product portfolio rationalization, you talk about the fact that we could save cost further on overheads if we centralize, but it's not clear. What exactly should we centralize? What should we decentralize?
Of course, there are a lot of synergies between the, of course, like I said, selling administration and those kind of stuff. As the brands are, there are many different brands and there are still offices doing marketing in different places, for example, so we can kind of centralize those kind of in a single unit under the headquarters. And of course, when we are looking for the divestment strategy, we believe that the synergies in cost optimization are actually better if we don't divest any of the brands. So we can get a lot bigger synergies when we don't divest any brands.